there's a little bit of an unfair advantage if you're a Met and a Yankee fan to this schedule, because the Mets and the Yankees are both teams, and we'll get to this in a minute, that are predicted to – well, actually, I'll bring this up now before we get into it. Mets and Yankees are both predicted to make the playoffs. Las Vegas just released their win total predictions. The Dodgers are predicted to win the most games. And I'll be honest with you, I was doing roster breakdowns, and I know you want to be a Yankee fan, give a face. Dodgers are the best team in baseball. If you look at their roster, I mean, my Lord. They have an all-star outfielder who can't even start. He's the number 4. AJ Pollock is the number.
Crazy.
4. You know, they are, if you look at their roster, they arguably, because I know the Yankees like to get this title, arguably have the best bullpen in baseball. They have a really good starting staff, and they definitely have the best lineup in baseball. I mean, my Lord.
Listen, they have one of the best closers in baseball with Kenley Jensen.
Got everything.
You know, like they have it all.
Yeah, it's very good. So the Dodgers – so I want to bring this point up before I get into why I think the Mets and Yankees are at a disadvantage. Mets and Yankees are both, according to Vegas, predicted to make the playoffs. They have the Dodgers predicted with the most wins at 37, the Yankees at 36.5, the Mets at 32. But if you look down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the Mets are the 9th team. 10 teams go to the playoffs. So they have the Mets going. They have them both. Here's where there's a little disadvantage. So, and I don't know what baseball's thinking here, okay? Simple schedule formula would have been you play the teams that were in your division. For example, the AL East, you play all 4 of those teams 10 times, which they're doing. That's 40 games. And then you play the 5 teams in the other division 4 times each, and that's 20 games. 40 and 20 is 60. You play everybody the same amount of time. Perfect. It's easy. Never been so easier. You think baseball does things easy? Of course not. Of course not. Maybe the Wilpons own baseball, and I don't know. So anyway, they decided that there's going to be some teams in your out of division that you're only going to play 3 times instead of 4, and then you're going to play your rivals 6 times. So the reason, yes, and the Dodgers, and Robert also says, we're still talking about system, Dodgers also have the number 1 minor league system in baseball also, which is actually true. Number 1 ranked minor league system. So anyway, listen to this. So because the Yankees and the Mets, 2 playoff contending teams, are rivals, instead of them playing only 4 times, they're playing 6 times, which means that maybe, like, for example, I'll give you an example. I'll use the Yankees. If you're playing everyone 4 times, that's equal. Now you're playing the Mets 6 times, and instead of playing the Marlins 4 times, who are not good, you might only play them twice because it's still got to even out to 20. So some team in the division, and I'm looking right here, are only going to play like Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a contender for the division. They're really good. Tampa Bay gets to play the Marlins 6 times while you play the Mets. That's a disadvantage. Why is it not 4, 4, 4, and 4? Why did they make that last-minute switch to one team is 6 and the rest are 3 and 4? That's dumb. Totally dumb. You don't.
I guess that has to do with probably ratings for TV. I would imagine, right? I mean, who wants to see the Yankees and the Marlins play?
Dude, the ratings are going to be through the roof because people are dying for sports. I mean,
but you still got matchups that are going to draw bigger audiences. You know that, Jim.
So what you're saying is, if the Yankees missed the playoffs because you had to play the Mets 6 times, you don't have. You're good with because the ratings were good on Yes Now.
Well, I'm talking about not me. I'm talking about.
I want to know how you feel about that. Do you not? That's unfair.
If we can't beat the Mets the majority of the times, then maybe we don't belong in the playoffs. I mean,
the Mets is just an example of the conference. You think it's fair that they could have made the schedule and they originally were going to, where you just played everyone the same amount of times and then they make that switch?
I think there's a lot of things in baseball that aren't fair. But you know something? I mean, we could go in hours about what's wrong with baseball and what's unfair in baseball. Listen. Best thing they could come up with. Major League Baseball is not going to make any money off the fans. They're looking for big matchups. It makes sense that they would do that. How I feel, if we can't beat the Mets and we can't win our games, then we don't deserve to go to the playoffs. I don't care who we play.
Sure, we'll enjoy being home because you ain't beating us. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, normally, if you look at it, rivals are local issues. Like it's they're within proximity of each other. And I think doing that kind of limits travel for a lot of these teams. You know what I'm saying? So that's a couple less games. They got to travel to Florida, travel to Boston or wherever it might be, you know. So I understand it from that perspective, and I understand what you're saying, Jim, about the advantage and stuff like that. About okay, yeah, this one team might be playing a bad team 4 extra times than you are, and this and that. But all this really does is just supplement us our little 2-week period of interleague play before the All-Star break we would normally get, or after. You know, this is just them giving us our interleague play. That's all it is.
You do realize that teams have been like saying they're kind of tired of the interleague. Even the fans last year, last year they didn't even do the 2-week and 2-week interleague anymore. Last year, the whole season had interleague. You had playing an interleague series on opening day.
I like that, actually. I liked it all the way across. I love interleague personally, and I would love it even more if they would have a universal DH. If they had a universal DH, I guarantee you that people wouldn't mind the interleague as much, because it's irritating when you're playing a 3-game or something like that to watch it back and forth. And Jim, I understand your disposition of having to play us extra times. I wouldn't want to play us extra times either. You being a Mets fan,
I get it.
I get it. It's okay, Jim.
I'm worried about fairness to the league. We're not the only ones in this predicament. If you look at some of the other matchups from teams in other divisions, some teams, really lose out because they have to play teams that are more games against teams, and they had it set up perfectly. And I don't know why the last minute changed just to get 2 extra games, because you made a point, Matt. Maybe they don't, outside a New York bubble, nobody gives a crap about the Mets playing the Yankees. Just like when the Dodgers play the Angels, that's an LA thing.
Yeah, nobody cares.
We don't care about it. And it's not making the schedule fair. And say what you want. Maybe the Yankees go in and win 5 or 6 against the Mets. Anything is possible when you play the games. But I tell you what, I could see the Yankees guaranteed to steamroll Miami. So to take away games and let them play a team like, would you rather, why would you want to face DeGrom two times when you could face, I don't know, Bartolo Colon on the Marlins if he'd be their ace? I mean, you get my point.
So the bigger question then to me is does baseball need to realign? We're gonna have a DH rule, supposedly. We see if this happens or not. Would it be better to realign baseball where the Yankees, the Mets, the Philadelphia, the Nationals are all in one division? I mean, you don't think so?
Realign locally?
Only because I worry about one thing. If you do that, like one of the things is that slowly's bothered me over time with baseball is they've kind of like slowly gotten away from what baseball was all about. You know what I mean? Like a little thing here, a little thing there. I don't want to see them take away all those rivalries, regardless of maybe Baltimore's not that good right now, but they still have a history with playing the Yankees and Boston. And I see what you're saying, but I think you lose some of that juice, some of that fire. When the Mets played the Yankees in the World Series in, was it 2000? Was it?
2001, yeah.
That was great because they don't play during the regular season. Personally, to be honest with you, I'd like to just get rid of interleague play and just go back to the way it was, where where you would be sitting around clamoring like, God, wouldn't it be amazing for the city if the Yankees and Mets met in the World Series because they never play each other? Now it's just like, oh, well, let's review the 12 games they played this season as we prepare for the World Series.
I think this is an example of the league maybe just putting a little bit too much seasoning on the meal after it was done. I think just a little bit too much dressing. I think they were good, and they said, man, we should just do something to kind of spice it up a little bit. Let's add some more rivalry games in. And I think this is just an example of them trying to just do just a little bit too much.
Thank you.
Jim, I completely disagree with you on the interleague play. I think interleague play during the season is important. I think it's important for a lot of different reasons as far as scouting purposes, gauging your team against who might be your opponent. Like when you see a top-tier NL team face off against a top-tier AL team in the middle of the season, first of all, it draws numbers.
World Series.
And you're like, everybody's like, hey, this could be the World Series. And guess what? If they give you a good game, if they give you a 12-inning rundown and people are scoring runs and they're getting strikeouts and it's a good game, guess what? Now people are clamoring to see it even more because they know what it could be on a 5 or a 7 game series.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I think in that way, if you look at it that way, I believe that it could be a good thing if it plays out right. If it plays out right.
Right. So real quick, I'm going to answer this question for Alex, and then we'll get into, because we still got to talk about the Yankee and Mets 5 players we're looking to improve this year and the Cespedes thing, and I want to get all that in today. Alex just asked, so we'll just use one-word answers here. Just out of curiosity, who would you root for if the World Series was White Sox versus Cubs and or Angels versus Dodgers? So I will tell you I would root for the White Sox because I think they're going to be really good this year, and people are underestimating how good. I have them as my pick to win that division, and I would take the Dodgers. How about you guys? White Sox, Cubs, who you got?
I'd go Cubs just because of their suffrage throughout time, and I'd go with the Dodgers because of their link up to the old city.
Matt?
You can ditto me on the Cubs because of their history. The Angels and the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers are from Brooklyn originally, so maybe I'd probably go from them.
You could say Angels to see Mike Trout win that title, and the Cubs just won the title like less than 10 years ago.
I'm not a big individual play guy because Mike Trout. If the Angels win, the Angels win. That's the kind I go with teams anyway.
I got you. All right, so that answers Alex's question. So one of the things that we talk about the DH. And we talk about what teams the DH helps. Now you automatically remove American League teams from this conversation because they had the DH anyway. So they haven't gained anything. One of the big people it helps is the Mets because Cespedes has barely played in 2 years. J.D. Davis cemented himself as an everyday player last year, and he's young, and he's going to start in left field most nights. And Dominic Smith can go out in left field when they need to get that lefty bat in there, who also showed that he can hit, field and hit. And, when Pete Alonso took over the first base job. Cespedes is ready. Reports are he's completely healthy. He's ready to go, and the Mets have him slated in to be their full-time DH. So Cespedes is 34 or 35 years old, somewhere in there. This is the last year of his contract. He will not be a Met next year. I don't care if he hits 100 home runs. They're not bringing him back. So two-part question. We go Mac to Matt. I want to get both of your opinion on this. Number one, was it good for Cespedes that now he could play because there's every day instead of this every fourth day? And number two, do you think Cespedes has one of those seasons that you see a lot of players have when it's their walk year and they just all of a sudden play up to their potential and then they get one more contract out of it from somebody?
Yeah, I mean, for Cespedes, because of his fielding and his recent injuries and stuff, yeah, I mean, of course it helps him. Does it, what will his numbers be? We'll find out because he didn't really play that much that last year. So, I mean, I'll be interested to see what he can do just as a DH. As far as being his walk-off here to go somewhere else, possibly if the Mets don't return him. You always see that these people that are coming up on contracts like Stanton for the Yankees and other players like that, they have these big years and we sign them or we take on their contracts for a lot of money. So yeah, this is a big year for Cespedes, and if he does have a year like he's had in the past, it will help you guys out a great deal.
What do you think?
Listen, if Cespedes can step back in after not playing since 2018 and even be kind of good, serviceable, middle of the pack batter, middle of the pack OPS, decent slugging percentage, if he can do that, it'll help the Mets. But fact of the matter is he's been so hurt and he hasn't played in so long. Is this guy going to step back in, although he's had time to heal up and things like that? Sure. But I don't know if Cespedes is a guy that's going to help in and be the difference maker for the Mets after so much time off. I think it's going to be more along the lines of like Wilson Ramos stepping up this year, or Ahmed Rosario coming in and making a difference. J.D. Davis is going to have to step up. Brandon Nimmo, those guys, Conforto, those guys are going to have to really step it up. Those are going to be the ones that make the difference for you. When they figure out who their DH is going to be, if it's going to be Alonso full-time, Robinson Cano, that guy was –
Well, Cano's going to start at second base, but – see, that's the one thing.
How are they still starting him at second base after last year? How is he even still on this team? Because if it wasn't for that contract, he wouldn't be there. He wouldn't be there, Jim. The fact that the Mets are going to put Robinson Cano back on second base this year just because of the fact that they're paying him so much money.
Why not? What's wrong with him? Look at his stats.
Smoking. He's horrible, Jim. He's horrible. He can't field. He can't bat anymore. None of that. Stick his butt in the DH, and if he can't do it, Get rid of them.